Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron. Just thought we'd do another little video about the news that broke on Friday afternoon that Everton had been deducted 10 points due to a breaking of one profit and sustainability rule. Everton had overspent by around about £20 million, which led to the, quite frankly, disgusting 10-point deduction, which is absolutely makes no sense whatsoever and by absolute no means fits the level of break of rule, if you like, that Everton committed. Everton, as I said, went over by £20 million. That £20 million was directly linked to the stadium costs, nothing to do with players, nothing to do with trying to gain an advantage. Everton worked closely with the Premier League for a number of years to try and rectify that amount of money, with the Premier League effectively watching over their shoulder for a number of months. I think it was about a year, maybe 2 years. Also, the Premier League at that time stating that other football clubs had no case to answer when it come to suing Everton, and that they were happy with the way in which Everton were running the business. Interesting how that all changed seemingly in a matter of hours, and now Everton sit joint rock bottom of the table after a fantastic last few weeks. There has been a couple of updates surrounding this. The Metro Mayor of Liverpool, Steve Rotherham, has written a letter to Richard Masters himself. He has said, "Dear Richard, I am writing to express my deep concern and opposition to today's decision by the Premier League panel to deduct 10 points from Everton Football Club. The sanction imposed is not only an unprecedented but a wholly disappropriate one too. While I understand and indeed support the importance of maintaining discipline and upholding the integrity of the sport, it is crucial to ensure that any punitive measures are proportionate, and just. I do not believe that this punishment fits the crime. The decision to deduct 10 points from Everton is excessive, considering the club's willingness and proactivity in collaborating with the Premier League to ensure all dealings with FFP compliant when it was clear they were close to breaching the rules. There are a number of mitigating factors in Everton's transgression in relation to debt ceilings that are affect geopolitical and therefore outside of their control. As many people have pointed out, the punishment imposed appears severe for the charge in question and sets a new precedent when compared with sanctions handed to other clubs for financial infringements. It surpasses previous penalties in 2010 when Portsmouth entered administration, a case of serious mismanagement. They were hit with only a 9-point penalty for falling into administration a second time in 3 years. In 2012, they faced a 10-point deduction. The implication that Everton's actions are somehow more egregious is frankly ludicrous. I completely support the club's appeal and would urge you to take a more balanced approach and consider alternate forms of punishment that do not unfairly penalise the club's players and supporters. As a founding member of both the Football League and the Premier League, Everton are an important part of the fabric of English football. They deserve to be treated fairly, justly and with respect. I look forward to your response. Yours sincerely, Steve Rotherham, Mayor of the Liverpool City region." Now, just to contextualise the importance of that letter by Steve Rotherham, not only is Steve Rotherham a political figure within the city, so obviously he has got a lot of power in the sense of his words, and when he writes letters like this, it tends to be from a position of, as I said, political power. But also an interesting thing to remember about Steve Rotherham is he is also a Liverpool fan, and quite openly a Liverpool fan. Now, this shouldn't matter, but we know in modern day football this absolutely does matter, because as we've seen over the last 72 hours since this news was announced, there's been a lot of tribalism amongst social media. A lot of opposition fans are laughing, are joking. A lot of opposition fans are saying they deserve it, they've cheated, blah 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 blah. And there's a lot of ha ha ha, because it's not us, we're going to laugh at you, and that is what happens in football these days. And ultimately that happens at a very low level and a very high level, from things like teams losing a game of football on a Saturday afternoon. People will laugh at them, to massive historical events that could seriously impact the future of said football club. Opposition fans will always point and laugh. There's very, very little sympathy in football in this day and age, because we live in such a tribal society, not only within football but within society itself, where we have very much had the it's you versus everybody sort of mentality created within this country over the last few years, and that's exactly what we're seeing at the moment over social media. Opposition fans having a laugh, opposition fans having a dig, and opposition fans saying, well, they deserve it, etc, etc, etc. And do you know what? I haven't got a big problem with opposition fans having a laugh and a joke and saying, haha, guess what the temperature is outside, -10, because that ultimately is all part of football. And if Liverpool Football Club were deducted 10 points for a breach of some form of financial rule, then maybe I'd have a little bit of a laugh and a little bit of a joke, and I'd, try and make light of the situation, because, they're your rivals, they're a team in the same league as you. With any team, really, I'm not saying I would have a great amount of sympathy with anybody. However, what I can't stand for is misrepresentation and misinformation and false information being thrown about social media as if it is fact. As I said, I understand opposition fans laughing and pointing and saying, they cheated, they deserve it. But what I can't sit here and read through is articles about how Everton spent a gut-wrenching amount of money under Frank Lampard, when in fact we actually made more money from player transfers than we spent. What I can't sit here and read is people saying Everton have spent £700 million in the last 3 years, when actually we're in the bottom 3 in the league for spend over that period of time. The implication that the points deduction is being brought in because of a financial breach years before to do with the stadium. The money that everybody keeps talking about that Everton spend every year, we've actually only had one big summer where we've spent a considerable amount of money, and I think it was 2017. So, it's going on 6 years now, nearly 7 years since that summer, where, granted, we did blast a load of money and we did spend a lot of it in poor areas, but to sit there and state that we do that every single year is simply false. It's not fact of the matter. It's wrong information. Everton haven't spent huge amounts of money since, as I said, 2017 was that summer that everybody talks about. Everybody thinks because we spent over £150 million in that one summer, the summer we brought in Sigurdsson, the summer we brought back Rooney, the summer we brought in Klassen and Michael Keane. People seem to think, opposition fans seem to think, that Everton then spent 150 million every single year for the next 5, 6, 7 years after that. The fact of the matter is we didn't. And what I also find hilarious is this notion from certain clubs like Leicester, like Leeds, like Burnley, like Southampton, who are now running with this strange narrative of, well, we weren't compensating because we were relegated because you overspent. Hang on, Everton have been in a relegation battle 2 times over the last 3 seasons. Both of those times, Everton have been in a relegation battle because we have not spent money in order to try and balance the books with the Premier League to avoid being in this position. Really, what Everton should have done is gone and spent another £600 million on players, being nowhere near a relegation battle for the last 2 seasons, not caused us fans any stress or any upset or any anger or any frustration, just, blasted all the money, broke more rules, because why not? You're going to break one and you're going to get fined and points deducted. You may as well go and spend another 150 million. We were always going to get the same punishment anyway, whether it was one financial breach of £20 million or whether it was a financial breach of 500 million. We were always going to get a 10-point deduction. So we may as well have gone out and spent a load of money, being nowhere near the relegation zone, and be hit with a 10-point deduction now. But no, we didn't. What we did was we tried to work with the Premier League. We cut our spending down massively, to the point where, bloody hell, I'm pretty sure the club had to email the Premier League to see if we could afford to put sausage rolls in the concourse at fucking half-time of games. We didn't bring any players. We spent £1.5 million in that summer that Rafa Benitez took over the football club on Damari Gray. We then moved to the next summer, and okay, we brought in a couple of other players, Onana and stuff, but we also sold Richarlison. We sold Anthony Gordon not so long after. So we're still up in terms of net spend in that period of time in which Everton have fought relegation. The reason we've fought relegation is because we've completely cut down on bringing players in and spending big money in order to try and put ourselves in a position where we don't face a fine. So for all of those opposition fans out there saying, we were relegated because Everton cheated, we went down because Everton cheated. No, newsflash, Leeds, Burnley, Southampton, Leicester, anybody else that happened to be relegated during those 2 seasons, and I think they were all the teams, during those 2 seasons in which Everton were fighting relegation, it was nothing to do with Everton Football Club spending an extra £20 million on a stadium cost. You were relegated because you were shite, And for the most part, you still are shite. I've had Leeds fans telling me how great they are and how unbelievable they are and how brilliant they are in the Championship. Leeds might be doing well at the moment, and fair play to them. I've got nothing against Leeds. Absolutely nothing against them. Fair play to them. But the Championship level at the moment is the worst it's ever been. So, Burnley turned up last season and absolutely bladded the Championship, and they're one of the worst teams I've ever seen to come to Goodison Park this season. So, but again, I've got nothing against Leeds. Got nothing against Leeds, nothing against Burnley, nothing against Leicester. What I have got against is two things. Firstly, I think it's quite embarrassing for those clubs, and if the clubs want to try and seek compensation to try and earn a bit more money, whatever it is, what it is, but fans coming out with statements like, we were relegated because you cheated. No, that's stupid. If Everton were relegated and Leeds come out, had broken an FFP rule, let's say, and had stayed up at that season, I wouldn't be coming on here saying Everton were relegated because Leeds have broke a rule. I'd be coming on here saying, well, no, Everton were relegated because we were shite and we were ran into the ground. In the same way as that I'll say now, don't get me wrong, I think, as I said, my big issue with this whole situation is that the punishment does not fit the crime. As I said on Friday's video, if I went to the park with my dog and I was walking my dog and she had a poo on the floor and I just walked past and left it, I wouldn't be put in jail for 45 years, would I? Because that punishment doesn't fit the crime, in the same way as that Everton overspending by £20 million whilst doing everything they could to work with the Premier League to try and balance those books. And the cost that we'd overspent by being a stadium cost, not even a player or wages or anything that could have any form of sporting implication, is nonsense when you think of the points deduction that Everton have been given. And we know it's nonsense because we've heard 99% of people within football, whether it be ex-players, whether it be ex-managers, whether it be, as we've said, politicians, lots and lots of people who know what they're talking about, not just Everton related people in general, coming out on social media and saying this is wrong, this isn't right whatsoever. I fully understand and admit Everton have done wrong. Of course we have. We have broken a rule. We have breached one of the FFP rules. Therefore, we deserve to be punished for that. No issue whatsoever. No issue with it. I understand people saying, well, what's a fine going to do for a team that have broken FFP? That's fine. There's many a punishments Everton could have been given that are nowhere near as severe as a 10-point deduction in the middle of a Premier League season. Could have had a transfer embargo, could have had a suspended points deduction on the basis that if you do this again over the next 12 months, you will get a 6-point deduction, considering it's not like we broke the rule and then said, oh, fuck it, let's just go and spend another 150 million, who cares? No, that's not what happened. We actually tried our very best to try and, balance those books, as I've said, amongst a load of mitigating circumstances, which we've already spoken about: COVID, a war, a player being taken off of our hands that was worth somewhere between 10 and 15 million through no fault of our own, gone for nothing. COVID, not furloughing our staff, whilst other big massive football clubs did furlough their staff. Lots of mitigating circumstances, and you would think that Richard Masters, as I said, you would think he would have a brain to think, you know what, actually, I'll give these the benefit of the doubt a little bit. I'm not saying let us get away with it, but I'm saying, like I said, the punishment fit the crime a little bit more. But this is where the whole conversation about the Premier League being corrupt comes in. The reason Richard Masters hasn't done that is because Richard Masters wants to make an example of Everton, and what Richard Masters will now do, and I'm willing to bet a lot of money on this, is he'll cower away. You'll never hear from him again. He'll be retired. He'll get a big payout to be retired. He'll leave the Premier League. Someone else will come in, and Chelsea, Man City, Man United, Nottingham Forest, all of these other football clubs, Newcastle, that will now be shitting themselves, will not have anything to deal with, because the new person will come in and say, oh yeah, we're not going to give points deductions out because that's not my way of doing it, that was his way of doing it. And Everton will be the only club that ends up with a points deduction as severe as this. I'm willing to put an awful lot of money on that you will never, ever, ever see another points deduction of this magnitude for this situation. Man City won't get it, Chelsea won't get it. Man United, by the way, are apparently over the £200 million mark when it comes to losses, so that therefore they're over £100 million over the threshold, so they should get a 30-odd point deduction. Maybe that one will go to the the independent panel, which we'll get onto. It won't, because the Premier League needs Manchester United in it. They've admitted it does before. And again, as I said, that's where the corruption comes in. I don't think this is as fair as it seems. I don't think this is a case of, oh, well, we're making an example out of them. No, they wouldn't do it to Chelsea. They wouldn't do it to City. They wouldn't do it to Liverpool. They wouldn't do it to Arsenal. They wouldn't do it to Tottenham. They wouldn't do it to Manchester United. How many clubs does that make? 6. They wouldn't do it to Newcastle either. 7. Is it a coincidence that those are the same 7 clubs that are on telly every week? Those are the same 7 clubs that are on the advertisements, that are on the borders, that are on the your billboards, everything like that? No, it isn't. As I said, we've known for years the Premier League only cares about a certain number of teams, and anybody else they're not asked about. And it is, by the way, the most corrupt fixed league in the world. It is. It's worse than what it was in Italy back in the day. The Premier League, much worse, because in Italy it was right in your face and they admitted it. In here, it's right in your face and they're denying it. It's much worse than it ever was in Italy at the moment. It's so corrupt in this league. Another thing I want to talk about, interestingly enough, is the independent panel that that actually was dealing with Everton's case over the course of the last few days or so. Let me just read this. I got a really interesting DM this afternoon from I'm sure he won't mind, a man called Steve, who just messaged me saying, hi guys, Lyndon at Toffee Web, shout out Toffee Web, posted an article this morning. For your information, this is my reply to the article. How can we get maximum publicity for this? So, turns out that the man the Premier League appointed to head the so-called Independent Commission is David Phillips KC. And according to his webpage, in 2007, David Phillips acted for Leeds United in the 15-point controversy. David represented Leeds in every stage of the matter, from a members' meeting of the Football League through to the final determination by the arbitration panel. He is clearly proud of his association with his client, Leeds United. And then Steve goes on to talk about how, in his opinion, it's a major conflict that David Phillips, who is obviously got a massive affiliation with Leeds United, was on a board, an independent board, trying to find out whether or not Everton were guilty of an FFP charge, whilst Leeds United are one of the clubs that are trying to jump on Everton if they are found guilty. David Phillips said, I find that the complaint against Everton is upheld. The Commission may wish to award W.51.5 compensation to one or more of the applicant clubs. I direct that if the complaint against Everton is upheld, the Premier League must provide a copy of the decision to the applicant clubs forthwith. Within 28 days of the receipt of a copy of the decision, each applicant club must inform the Commission whether it wishes to pursue a claim for W.51.5 compensation. So basically, just to round that up, in case you're thinking, what are you talking about, Cam? The lawyer who represented Leeds United was appointed by the Premier League as the head of the independent panel in the case against Everton Football Club. The lawyer chaired the case brought by Leeds United and other clubs against Everton, and he decided if the commission is heading upwards the complaint against Everton, that same commission may wish to award compensation to one or more of the applicant clubs. So the fella who was the head of the independent committee actually has got a close relationship and worked closely to one of the football clubs that is trying to sue Everton if they were deemed guilty. Pardon me. How does that work? Another member of the independent committee was a former West Ham United board member, or a former West Ham United employee who was directly involved in a case regarding Carlos Tevez a number of years ago, in which they were found guilty of some form of money issue to do with that transfer, and they had to pay a fine. So you've got an independent board, an independent commission, all are either Premier League employees or something to do with Premier League clubs, either a direct Premier League employee or an employee of a Premier League club or once Premier League club. One of them is Richard Masters himself, who ran to the newspapers the day after our long-standing chairman passed away and told the newspapers Everton deserve a 12-point deduction. Okay, so he's a member of the independent panel. One is KC Phillips, as we've mentioned here, who is a avid, clearly Leeds United fan and worked with Leeds United closely over the years, and ironically Leeds are one of the clubs that are wanting to sue Everton. One of them is somebody who's worked very closely with West Ham United and been involved in a case against West Ham United for failings to, control their finances properly, and a couple of other members of the Premier League, a couple of other affiliates of the Premier League. How is that an independent committee? How is an independent committee made up of, 5 or 6 people? One of them is the chair of the Premier League. How is that? That's like me saying, right, everyone, I'm going to bring in an independent committee to look at the Mighty Blues. I'm going to bring one in, and I'm going to have them watch the videos, and I'm going to have them tell me whether or not they're good or bad. And then I stand up and go, I'm the chair of the independent committee. These videos are sound. He's boss. Crack on with it. It does not make any sense whatsoever. And then you've got somebody working close, who has worked closely to a club, who are wanting to seek compensation against the club that he is dealing with, and another who has worked closely to a case in which is proven that there were financial issues with. What you may as well have just walked up to your local boozer and picked 5 people and gone, lads and ladies, come and sit in this room and decide whether or not you think that these deserve a 10-point deduction. Because the people they've employed to this independent committee actually, A, aren't very independent of the Premier League, and B, have got, the majority of them have got, I don't want to say issues with Everton, but they've certainly got reasons as to give Everton a maximum punishment because it benefits them or benefits somebody that they are close with or a football club that they are close with. How is that independent? How, somebody explain to me, how do we get to that, and how is there not huge questions asked by Everton Football Club? If I'm Everton now, I'm suing the Premier League for the fact that its independent committee it consisted of 2 ex-Premier League people who have worked with clubs that will directly benefit from Everton being deducted 10 points. And the chief of the Premier League, who ran to the newspapers the day after our chairman passed away and cried for us to get a 12-point deduction. Absolute clown, Richard Masters. You are a disgrace. You are a vile, disgraceful human being. Absolutely horrible clown of a man. Clown of a man. You are no respect, no bollocks, no nothing. You are a tiny clown of a man. But he had an independent panel. If they'd have told us that Richard Masters, he was a part of the independent panel. If they told us that Richard Masters was a part of the independent panel 4 or 5 weeks ago, then we would have known we were getting a heavy points deduction, because he cried to the papers that he wanted us to get a heavy point deduction. So if we'd have been told, oh, by the way, he's on the panel, we'd have all sat back and gone, well, we're getting a points deduction then, aren't we? Because that's what he wants. By the way, that's what he wants through no previous sort of evidence of points deductions. He's not looked at previous cases in this situation. Oh, well, they got fined 6 points for theirs. They got fined 15 points for theirs. No, he hasn't. This is the first case of its kind. So he's effectively just gone out and gone, right, I want to deduct them 10 points for no real reason whatsoever. As I've said, it's not like Everton broke the rule and then said, well, fuck it, we've broke it now, so let's go and sign a £100 million striker to make sure we're nowhere near the relegation. That's when Leeds, Burnley, Southampton would have a case as to saying, hang on, they were already over the limit in profit and sustainability, and then they went and bought a player that took them away from the relegation zone. But we didn't. The cost was the stadium. Everton Football Club spent £3 million last summer, and it was on a loan fee for Danjuma. Oh, you bought Beto for 40 million! No, we didn't. We haven't spent a penny on Beto yet. I haven't spent a penny on him. I haven't spent a penny on Yusuf Chamiti. I haven't spent a penny on any of the other players we brought in, bar and Danjuma. So, as I said, if I'm the Premier League, Daily Mail, and that absolute hobbit-looking tit is getting sued. The Premier League are getting sued. And as I said, any other newspaper that wants to sprout blatant lies. Blatant lies. Matt Hughes' latest article in the Daily Mail, by the way, is that Everton could face a further 9-point deduction as 4 Premier League clubs seek to sue Everton for £100 million each, which will drive them into administration. Does this tit not think about what he's writing before he writes these things? Do you know if Everton face a further 9-point deduction and a sued, which, by the way, can't happen, as we've already spoken about numerous times, by these football clubs, You do realise if Everton are plummeting towards administration, these football clubs aren't going to get a fucking penny from Everton Football Club because we won't have a penny to give because we'll be declared bankrupt in an administration. So the article doesn't even make sense because we ain't giving nobody any money if we're in administration. So, as I said, there's a lot of stuff going around at the moment, and I don't want to get it twisted. I know people will watch this and go, you cheated, get over it, you deserve what you get. Reality of the situation is, do Everton deserve to be punished? Absolutely. Absolutely. Does this punishment that we've been given meet the crime? No. And if it was Manchester United, if it was Liverpool, if it was Chelsea, if it was Man City, they'd all be whinging and crying their eyes out if it was given to them. Because it is a blatant show of corruption. There's a lot wrong with this and a lot doesn't make sense. And, you know, Richard Masters has just messed about with the wrong fan base. Because, as I said, Richard Masters, whether it's through resignation, whether it's through being sacked, or whether it's through him, you know, as I said, messing with the wrong fan base, Richard Masters won't be employed by the Premier League in 12 months' time. Mark my words, Richard Masters won't be employed by the Premier League in 12 months' time. Not a chance. Not a chance. So, yeah, I just wanted to give a little bit more of a level-headed discussion on it because, as I said, emotions were high on the weekend and it was all new and everything was very high. But, yeah, there's a lot of question marks around this and a lot of things that Everton Football Club should be trying to address. Not just the appeal process and appealing the actual situation itself, but asking deeper questions about why certain things have been said, why certain things are being done, why certain people were on independent panels. It just doesn't make sense. And as I said, it's Everton versus the world now. It's Everton versus everybody, and that atmosphere at Goodison Park on Sunday is going to be the best it's been in a long, long time. And I cannot wait to get in there. I cannot wait to get in there. This will bring us closer together. I'm not saying that's a good thing because ultimately it shouldn't need to bring us closer together. We won 3 away games on the spin and we were brilliant. We were brought together anyway. But, like I said, you know, 33,000 and counting pounds raised for banners and for things against the Premier League. Brilliant. Absolutely unbelievable stuff by everybody involved in that. And, yeah, for me, you know, we need to step up now. And as I said in Friday's video, it's us versus everybody. Us versus everybody now. And, you know, again, I don't think the Premier League's rules or laws should be respected by Everton Football Club whatsoever. And I think Everton should go and get the best lawyers in the world. Probably can't afford it now because of the takeover situation, etc. But in an ideal world, Everton would take the Premier League to the cleaners because what the Premier League have tried to do, ironically, is prove that they do not need an independent regulator. And ironically, what they've done is prove that they, more than ever, need an independent regulator. So, yeah, there you go. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. I'm off to get me tea. If you've enjoyed it, leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe as well. That would mean a huge, huge amount to me. Big, big thank you all for watching, and we'll see you after.